Hello everyone and welcome to this new episode of the Positive Leadership Podcast. Today, I have the great pleasure of welcoming a remarkable leader, a woman who's made a significant impact on the tech and retail industries. With an impressive career at IKEA, Google, Samsung, and now, for the last couple of years, the CEO of Decathlon. Decathlon in French, which, by the way, is France's favorite brand for many years. She embodies an inspiring leadership style that is deeply focused on innovation and sustainability. A warm welcome, Barbara Martin Coppola. Thank you so much for being with us today in person.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Barbara, I love to start always my guests asking about their roots. You were born in Spain. You spent a few years there studying, in part in Spain. I'd love to hear about your parents, maybe your grandparents as well, and the people who kind of shaped maybe some of your core values early on in your childhood.
I love this question. So I grew up in Madrid and in a bilingual family. My mother is French, my father is Spanish, and my mother was a really loved teacher in an international school.
Okay.
And she always came back home with a lot of stories from kids from all over the world. That gave me a little bit of curiosity to see the world later on, as you will see. My father started to work really early. Mm-hmm. He was around 15 years old when he started to work.
Wow, that's early.
Very. And he made his way to become the CFO,
yes.
Chief Financial Officer at his company.
Mm-hmm.
Loving business, loving corporate. And so I grew up, if you will, in a mixture of humanity, emotions, all about people, and at the same time, this competitive nature sometimes of the corporations and the logical as well side of it. I grew up with a lot of sports.
Okay.
My father was into sports like crazy, and so my sister and I.
What kind of sports activities?
A lot of tennis.
Tennis, yeah.
We did running, we did skiing, fitness, dance.
Yes.
All of it, and then a lot of piano.
Okay.
So I was a part of the Conservatory of Music since I was pretty small until the very end. So creativity, expression, and at the same time, this sort of science part. Had a very happy upbringing.
Yes.
And with core values of modesty, service to others, and very much having curiosity for the human being, no matter what position, no matter what origin.
Very fundamental values, and I'm sure we'll discuss more of that later on in your career. So you've been pursuing a very comprehensive education, actually, beginning with an engineering degree at the Polytechnic University of Madrid and Telecom Paris as well, followed by an MBA at INSEAD, of course, and additional training at Harvard. I think this dual education still today, Barbara, for women is pretty rare, by the way. I mean, there's some, but relatively speaking, it's pretty low compared to many males doing some of that. So why did you choose this dual path? And did you already envision, in a way, joining the technology sector and overall being at the center of innovation? And we'll discuss more what is innovation, what does it mean?
Great question. So I actually double majored in piano and engineering.
Piano and engineering.
Exactly.
Okay.
And piano, I just loved it. It was a way to express myself. There was rigor to it as well. And some inspiration on my mother's side of people dedicating their lives to music. The science part was coming from deep curiosity in terms of how things work. Yep. I'm like, you pick up a phone and you can talk to people. How does it work? And so I went into it I was pretty okay, grade-wise, and so why not? I had a really happy sort of 5 years studying it, both in Madrid and in Paris, wasn't clear at all what I wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
And actually, I had a first internship right after school where it was a deeply technical assignment, and somehow I was missing people. And so at that point, it was a bit of a difficult time because I was like, what do I do? I dedicated, exactly, dedicated 5 years of my life to studying this engineering degree. But then I still loved tech. And there was other ways of working with tech, more on the marketing, business, product strategy side, which I actually discovered through my career. And then on the MBA, after some years in the tech sector, it was a way of expanding horizons, and it was a way of actually connecting with international people everywhere. I'm now in the board of INSEAD, by the way.
So you go to Fontainebleau from time to time?
I do, and there's back those beautiful memories of this gift year that I had when I was there. So I've always been fascinated by learning, and learning always. I think we never stop learning in our lives. And so it was a present, I would say, to be able to be in these institutions. Nothing that came, from a sort of predisposition whatsoever. I worked hard in order to be at those institutions, and never thought I would actually get there, and I did. And so I enjoyed every bit of it.
And I think then didn't you join Texas Instruments after that?
I did.
Why why this company, and for what kind of role? First role?
Well, the key truth to that role is that they had a rotational program.
Okay.
And so the curiosity of living in different parts of the world was exactly the possibility. So 3 times 6 months in 3 different countries.
Which ones?
It was Finland. I was in the U.S. And then in Japan as well.
Wow.
And Germany. So really interesting places, fast learning because of different natures and different places. I chose TI that was one big reason. The second one is it was the mobile revolution.
Yeah, of course.
So back in the day, Nokia was number one. And the Japanese Panasonic and NEC were number one, and things were exploding. Democratically, you could see, how mobile phones were getting to the hands of people. And so TI was the main chipset provider for the phones. And that's where I was working, which was very much in line with telecommunication and mobile engineering that I had learned at school. So that's why I went into TI. And it was called the university company back then. Okay. And it was very much living up to the expectations with many trainings, the rotations. So it was absolute pleasure. Yeah,
it's a wonderful way, I think, first of all, to get immersed into a company, to live abroad in a few countries. I know we've done that at Microsoft in the past when I was in the company as well. Or alumni loved it. I mean, the students loved it. So before we go back to tech, which I'd love to discuss a little bit more with you later on, Barbara, I'd love to double down a little bit on the unique opportunities you had early on, as you said, to not only travel, but live in different countries. I counted 8, but probably I'm under the reality. You talk about the US, Silicon Valley as well with Google, Northern Europe in Finland and Sweden as well, South Korea, we'll come back to Samsung, France. Did I miss any of those countries where you lived, maybe?
Well, you've got France, you've got Spain, Spain, Germany, Finland.
Germany as well, right.
Denmark.
Denmark as well.
Yeah, so a total of 9 countries. I lived in Singapore as well. So 3 continents,
So just a couple of months ago, actually, in a previous episode, the opportunity to welcome someone that you may know from INSEAD, Erin Meyer.
Oh, yeah.
You know Erin?
Of course, and I love the book.
Exactly. So you'll be very familiar with the book, The Culture Map, which is a book I loved and something I invited Erin back many years ago at Microsoft as well, because I was running all the global operations of the company, and something that fascinated me as well early on. To understand particular, just for our listeners who have not yet listened to that episode, please do. And at a high level, Erin has defined a framework where she talks about the context of those cultures. And she talks about a high-level context and a low-level context. And she talks about explicit cultures and implicit cultures. So just to take an example, clearly you've got low-context cultures like the US, which we know well together. I've been working with a US company for 40 years of my life, where basically you've got some very direct conversations, direct, specific, to the point, that come immediately. On the opposite end, and those are the countries you've been to, that would be great to discuss, you've got countries like Korea, which, like a few other Asian countries as well, although they differ, have basically very implicit cultures, where you've got to read, as we say, between the lines, or actually listen and hear all the non-verbal cues, which are 90% plus of the body, eye language, and face. So I'd love to understand the way you've been yourself, clearly living early on with your mom, you said, with international cultures. The way you've been adjusting and maybe sharing maybe a couple of stories of your learning, maybe some mistakes you did, like I did some mistakes, not fully understanding a specific culture at the beginning and then adjusting to fully comprehend what this culture is.
Yeah, it's one of my passions is actually the different cultures and the possibility of living and adapting to them.
Yep.
And so the choice I've made about living in different places was to link and to fit that passion that I had. You mentioned implicit. My father comes from a region of the world that is actually highly implicit. So the say is when you say you see a person in a stair, you don't know if the person's going up or down. So I was raised with my father like that, and then a super direct way of talking with my mother. So that's a bit of a training back home.
Who is French, right?
From Sicily.
From Sicily, Italian origin. Okay,
yeah,
that's an interesting mix.
and born in Tunisia.
Okay.
And so a bit of a mix there.
Yeah.
But when I was at Samsung, I was taking accelerated lessons to speak the language, but at the same time, I didn't have enough proficiency to be able to understand fully the business discussions. And I was reporting to the first woman VP ever in Samsung Electronics. And I had the big privilege to be a bit her mentee.
I see.
And she taught me the invisible language, actually, and how through the body, through the tone of the voice, through the eyes, one could actually very much understand what was happening. Even if the communication would be, in my case, not fully understood, or if the communication would be indirect. She also taught me how to influence in this context. Imagine it's a context of high hierarchical, many layers, actually. And so how to go about influencing in this culture when one is not Korean, and when one is actually there at a certain rank in the organization.
He's a foreigner and he's a woman as well.
Foreigner,
which
woman.
In Korea is not easy necessarily.
Wasn't married and I wasn't a mom back then.
That's a lot.
So I was in a certain category because that's how it works.
Yeah.
And it was a life lesson that she gave me in terms of influence. I learned one thing, and is the fact of being different can actually be a blessing. It can be a blessing because nobody is expecting you to do things the way they are done. And so either you go like, I would never fit, or you go like, I'm free to do things nobody else can do. And therefore, I was entrusted with certain high strategic projects that nobody wanted to take because they were actually very dangerous.
Risky for their careers.
Risky
right?
for their careers, especially in the way of, I'm going to stay my whole life at Samsung, and therefore, this one could actually be potentially difficult in this setting. And it enabled me to not only somehow prove I could do this, but which is important first for me and my career, to prove to myself first that I could deal with such a complexity, a lot of stakeholders, etc. But also be able to prove that I could manage in this sort of indirect environment successfully. So a blessing at the end in disguise, if you know what I mean. If I compare it to the US, which is like pretty much the opposite, I would say.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Then, the adaptation is on the other side. To sort of just say, with careful words, but still what I think about every situation, there's something liberating about it, I think.
Yes.
And the fact of saying things the way they are, I think is actually quite positive. Mm-hmm. I think it also helps in the, having less zones of gray.
Yes.
Things are this way, and so we gain time and efficiency, I would say, into moving without sort of I misunderstood this and that. So that plus the positive thinking and the positive attitude that I think was present in business in the US, it was actually a really interesting way. That I appreciated particularly, during my 7 years over there.
Working at Google.
Yeah,
very, very contrasted. I'm sure that you've been also, obviously, and today working with US partners and companies, and certainly appreciate this, I would say, directness they have. At the same time, I think, and I love, again, all my friends in the US for many years, sometimes you got, I think, to push a bit harder to get the real kind of meaty feedback that you need, right? Beyond, great job, Barbara, great job, Jean-Philippe. You see what I mean?
I totally see what you mean. And there is also that sort of invisible barrier also in the personal connections to go deep into a friendship.
Correct.
And so I think there's always, a pro and a con in every single culture.
Of course.
And every time in every culture, there's something to take to learn that you keep with yourself, always with a muscle of adaptation.
So given all that incredible experience since early on, Barbara, today, for the last few years, you are at the head of Decathlon. Clearly a French company rooted in northern France, the Hauts-de-France, as we say in France, but operating in more than 78 countries, maybe more, you'll tell me. So what is your, how would you define your leadership model today to basically inspire the Decathlon team in every country where you operate? And I hope, because I've tried to do that work for Microsoft for many years, to certainly try to inspire a common culture, which is the company's culture. And every company, we'll discuss more of that in a few minutes, has its own values, its own habits, its own behaviors, artifacts, so on and so forth. But at the same time, there's a lot of pride by local teams about the work they do and the way they belong to their society. So tell me more about the way you do that today, when Decathlon has very large businesses far away from France.
Yeah, it's a balance, isn't it, to find the first thing and to create cohesion globally, it's the purpose. Why do we wake up every day? And the purpose needs to be something bigger than ourselves, something that is here for society, for the planet, for humanity. When I joined Decathlon, we did this work to actually redefine the purpose. And right now, to move people through the wonders of sport, we believe that sport is beneficial for your head, your mind, but for the cohesion socially when we actually do sport with people and we move. We have a vision about the planet. We have a vision about how to do good in the world.
Yes.
So that's the first element, the purpose, the mission. Then the strategy needs to be clear and needs to be common everywhere in the world. That's another part. Now, the way we execute the strategy, there's different shades and different layers. Yeah. And I believe the freedom locally is really important to have. So the balance to have between the cohesion, the strategy, and also not to do 100 times the same thing in every place. Yes. So carefully designing, okay, what is common to everybody that anybody can use, but what is the local freedom so that Decathlon is French in France and it will be Indian in India. Yes. And I think the motivation, and it's very much the culture of Decathlon, is the responsibility and the entrepreneurship. It really taps into, I'm responsible about my local area and my role, and I'm free to find the way to express Decathlon where I am. Now, that is together with a brand that is global and the same, I would say, storyline and purpose, right? And so that careful mix, to be perfectly honest, sometimes we go too far one way and too far the other way.
Doing mistakes sometimes.
Absolutely. And so it's always looking at, did we go too far on the right or on the left? But especially never losing the freedom and empowerment of people everywhere. Yes. Because nobody likes to be told what to do.
Of course.
And that is, I think, this clarity, but all going in the same direction that one needs to find.
No, I'm fully aligned with you, Barbara. And I remember for many years in my professional life, I've been struggling, but also finding the right balancing act when it comes to what we call the empowerment, because it's a big word. As you know well, it doesn't translate well in French, actually.
Yeah, it's true. Oh, you're right.
Probably in Spanish as well. It's hard.
It's the same.
It's super hard. And so define actually what it means for the people, for the retail store people on the ground in India. What does it mean in terms of their freedom? What can they do? Pricing for the customers, customer service issues, whatever. I mean, what happens in a day-to-day life business? I think that's the hard part of the empowerment and freedom, right?
Fully agree. And imagine, India, if you put in the context, let's take that example. 5% of the population does sport today.
5%.
And Decathlon was the first brand to create sport, if you will. So the fields to practice sport, as we know them in other places in the world, were not existing. Yes. So in here, you've got almost a social function that is to kickstart sport in a place like India with beautiful culture and quite unique, I would say, in the world. And so finding, the right way with that context and connecting to people in that environment is something, as you can imagine, completely different than what we would do in France after 50 years of existence.
I really look forward to visiting a store in Bangalore, Hyderabad. I don't know where the stores are in India. I've been there so many times in my life to feel the experience of sports in India. It must be very special.
Special, is full of colors, emotion. It's full of enthusiasm. Every time I go, I come back with my heart full of joy. I love it. It's absolutely great.
Wonderful. Let's move on, Barbara, and talk and focus now on the tech, which is something we share in common. You worked, as I said before, at Texas Instruments, Google, Samsung, and of course you moved to retail, furniture retail, IKEA, and no sports, of course, Decathlon. So in terms of tech, I mean, can you kind of elevate maybe some common management practices you've been learning from companies which are very different, like Google and Samsung? You mentioned some of the cultural aspects of Korean company, American company, but fundamentally, given the tech innovation process, do you feel that today in your job and the same at IKEA, you've been bringing something new in terms of the management mix and skills that you bring to the table?
Absolutely. I'll take the example at IKEA because I was chief digital officer at IKEA. And digitalizing the company, one couldn't think of, it's about tech and it's about digital solutions. Not at all.
No.
It's actually about instilling a digital philosophy in the management of the company. It's a people transformation much more than it is a technology transformation. Yeah. So in this philosophy, some parts of ingredients that I would say that I'm sure you know by heart. Mm-hmm. One is the empowerment of people that we come back to.
Yes.
But with an extreme measurement perspective associated to that empowerment. One takes leadership. The measurability of that empowerment is direct. Yeah. The taking the elephant and cutting it into small pieces so that one can take risks, but in a measured way. Yes. Test, learn, adapt. And that way of instilling agility so that one can learn by doing is something that is really important for any company today, regardless of the sector where they are. The long life cycles, actually, of getting something perfect is not relevant anymore.
Agreed.
And therefore, how to incorporate that management into small teams that are cross-functional, because no one function has the truth, and therefore putting people around the table that bring that diversity around a common OKR, a common goal, is really, really important as well to bring into everyday life in the companies.
You know, I fully agree with you, Barbara. I'd love to come back to a very particular episode that you've been obviously part of in a big way. As the Chief Digital Officer of IKEA, you joined, I think, before COVID-19, right? Crisis. And I had the opportunity, as you know, to welcome Jesper Brodin, CEO of IKEA, to my podcast a couple of years ago. And he shared a very emotional moment that he left the company, where for a few days, he feared that the company might not survive. Only 20 out of 450 stores were open at the time. Then together with the entire leadership team, so I'm sure you are part of all of that, you decided to implement your 2-year e-commerce plan in just 6 weeks. That was absolutely mind-blowing. So can you share this exceptional moment when something that previously was conceived as impossible, after it would take years, was feasible in a few weeks? What was the magic behind that?
Yeah, I had joined, I was reporting to Jesper in his management team, and I had joined about 2.5 years before. So the important thing was that in these 2 years, the huge transformation that had happened, becoming a product organization, getting the tech right into microservices, hiring an incredible amount of people that knew how to manage tech, embedding a lot of practices within the organization because it's an end-to-end one. Then COVID came, and I would say it was like a huge acceleration. Huge acceleration that was really beneficial for IKEA. Because we went from like not even 7% of the total was e-com.
Right.
Very low.
Yeah, no, it's super low. Yeah.
To 25 in a matter of like months. And we remained at that level after COVID.
Yes.
So acceleration in the sense of, I would say the digital tech part was ready. Acceleration with the rest of the organization. On the fulfillment. On the integration, I would say, of different functions that were considered far from tech and far from digital, to suddenly work as a real cross-functional team, single-mindedly to serve customers during this difficult time. And that acceleration was the biggest learning for IKEA, because it remained as a, wow, now I know how to work with digital so much more. Now I know the true nature of cross-functional and the speed at which we're capable to implement things. It was a fantastic story. It bonded us in terms of functions,
and
big
teams
time.
and people,
The teams, the people, and especially IKEA is a company where people work for their lifetime. It's a beautiful culture, value-based place. And so doing good to the company during that time, I would say the love for digital people was like the highest I've ever known.
No, it certainly must have been incredibly, both stressful, certainly,
Sure.
but also incredibly exciting, inspiring at the end. If you were to draw a key lesson from that, because you are clearly coming from the outside, you are not one of the insiders at IKEA. Plus, you were propagating tech all across the functions in this huge company, from the stores again to the back end of the company. How much of that transformation spirit experience today are you able to translate into Decathlon rebirth, or whatever you want to call that, right? That you launched a couple of years ago. How would you communicate again to our listeners kind of the underpinnings of your transformation mindset?
Yeah, the transformation at IKEA was huge because it's an integrated value chain. So it designs the products in-house all the way to manufacture it, transport it, logistics, stores. So when you think the end-to-end of IKEA is very similar to Decathlon.
Yes.
Decathlon is an integrated end-to-end value chain. 80% of the products that we sell at Decathlon are Decathlon products, design conceived products. So the learnings at IKEA were really, really important for Decathlon. Couple of things that are really important. The first one is the fact of being an outsider can be a blessing again.
Can help.
Absolutely. Why? Because there is neutrality into seeing the facts, the people, the processes as they are.
Yes.
There is no emotional affection at the beginning.
Yes. Yeah, you have a period of grace at the beginning, and then you
and
become
then we get attached for sure. But at the beginning we have the view of a beginner, and somehow this is a blessing to be able to have the courage of changing things and doing the right thing for a company. The second thing is the absolute respect and embodiment of the values of the company. Yeah. Without 100% adaptation and living the values and the culture of the company, I don't think anybody can transform anything.
Any company,
Because bringing people along and having the inspiration to get people to follow and to actually feel at ease in this transformation, which means going into the unknown and feeling comfortable to try to create something, even if it doesn't work, it will be okay. Yeah. Is something that we create through human interaction. The other thing as well is the fact that the world is moving really, really fast.
Oh, yes.
And so both Decathlon, IKEA, and other companies know that they need to move and to adapt. And so that combined with the strong love for the company that people have inside is actually a really good recipe for doing things that maybe haven't been done or doing them in a different way. So the atmosphere, I would say, is actually conducive
to change.
To change.
The big change.
Yeah.
No, love the formula. Number one, coming from the outside, which helps being candid about what's not working maybe and what could work better. And number two, it's all about the people and the way you create a sense of deep belonging to the mission, the purpose, and create probably also, as you said, Barbara, a less risk-adverse culture and being able to go on and make mistakes and keep learning and doing better.
Completely.
So you worked, as I said before, into great inspiring family businesses. I'm always fascinated by family businesses. Many people don't realize we have some of the largest companies in the world where families still sit behind the scenes. And those companies were created by legendary founders with incredible stories. Just for our listeners, because I love some kind of history on the business as well, in Sweden, Ingvar Kamprad founded IKEA in 1943 when he was just 17 years old. The name IKEA is actually an acronym composed of his initials, Ingvar Kamprad, IK, the farm where he grew up, Tarid, the E, and the neighboring village, Agunarid, the A. And Kamprad revolutionized, as you know, the furniture industry by introducing the concept of affordable functional design with flat pack furniture that customers assemble themselves. After this retirement, the company was structured under the Inca Foundation and with along two other foundations, and it's pretty complex structures, allowing the Kamprad family to retain minority control over the company while allocating most of their wealth to the charitable trust. So 8 years later, Which ones of Ingvar Kamprad's values do you think you basically still carry on personally as a CEO of Decathlon?
Ingvar Kamprad came from a region of Sweden that is called Småland, that is known to be very down-to-earth people, modesty being a core value, and hard work somehow, service to the others, as people were helping each other back then in this region. You find actually 100% the embodiment of those values, not only at IKEA, which, by the way, I have 100% respect and I love the values that IKEA represents, but they're extremely similar to Decathlon. So there is something quite similar between the north of France as well, when you think about it, and the region from where Ingvar was coming from. Regions of working class people that, through entrepreneurship created something incredible. From scratch. And so the founder of Decathlon has my absolute biggest respect, not only in the values that he instilled in the company, but in the way he inspires still people right now. He's still alive. When he talks, it's more of a philosophy of life than company values. And so people are extremely proud of working for companies that have those strong human values that are as relevant today as they were more than 80 years ago for Ingvar and 50 years ago for Decathlon. As a CEO of Decathlon, the first most important thing in selecting a job is, do I love the culture? Do I very much can live these values? Are they mine? If not, one would be in a sort of like unauthentic self all the time, which I don't believe I can be.
You can't be,
And so that question and deeply understanding where the company comes from and the founder being almost like a father figure in many different ways is extremely important in understanding to say, can I actually bring value in this culture and in this setting?
No, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see that you were well prepared to take that role. No, I'd like to move east to Asia to talk about another incredible company and shibboleth, as they call it in Korea, South Korea, Samsung, which was founded in 1938 by Lee Byung-chul. For our listeners, you've got to understand he initially started with a grocery business before diversifying into trade, insurance. By the way, Samsung names means 3 stars in Koreans, reflecting the founder's vision to shine like a star in the sky. So as you all know, the long story short, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and beyond, Lee expanded Samsung business into electronics, TVs, semiconductors, PCs, mobile phone, of course, where they are #1 Android smartphone manufacturer today, and many more activities. Today, J.Y. Lee, the founder's grandson, is now executive chairman of Samsung Electronics and still holds a pretty significant strategic influence over the company. In the late 90s, Barbara, he stated, change everything except your wife and children, demanding a complete transformation of the company to surpass Sony and Apple at the time. It was his cry to his people, employees. So you spent 3 years in Seoul, and you mentioned already some incredible experiences you had as a woman and, taking some risky paths. You work at the headquarters. So what did you learn from that Samsung very special family Lee spirit and the constant reinvention mindset, I think, in this business, which has been incredible? Again, what are maybe 1 or 2 unique values you would elevate, saying, well, that is something that is now part of my DNA because what I learned there?
So one thing that stuck with me at Samsung was how they were combining innovation and branding at the same time. And I'll give you one specific example that I think speaks for itself. Samsung was #2 in the TV industry back then. And they wanted to be #1. Back then, the TVs were all putting like how much high definition they had, how many pixels they had, how much technology lingo, they were putting in advance. Samsung was as good as anybody else, if not better technology-wise, but they chose the approach of saying, okay, the design of this TV is so beautiful, I'll put it like a piece of art in the wall of my living room. And the whole thing was people with the TV switched off, looking at the TV as it was a piece of art. They changed completely the discourse, where, of course, the technology was going to be there. But the beautiful added value was, this is design and this is beauty, and it's a core component of your living room. That storytelling and that branding, I remember being in workshops, taking care of every single detail. And how Samsung elevated itself from a sort of mid position to almost a premium, higher-end positioning during that time. Always getting the innovation and the way of expressing that innovation in a remarkable, brilliant way. That's one that I absolutely love. The second one that I loved during my time there was the power of the group and the community. When a decision was taken, there was no I anymore.
No argument.
It was we. And there was a liberating aspect, me having, all these years in the West. Of actually not asking myself, about myself, my individuality, this and that. I was just part of the team. And the team was moving at one, in a way where I've never seen such an execution to its brilliance, its precise nature, and its speed. I appreciated a lot the group thinking. There was also a little bit of this family feeling with colleagues, where it wasn't stopping as you're my colleague and I have a relationship with you as a colleague. It was much deeper. And to give you, a personal anecdote, I got married while I was in Korea. My husband was working in another part in semiconductors in Samsung as well. And the day that we got married in Madrid, the head of his business gave 1 week off to the employees to come to the wedding.
To all the employees of the unit?
To the employees of the unit where he was working.
So they came to Madrid?
And they came to Madrid. And so we had a super international wedding in 3 different languages, and it was like this beautiful moment. Just to tell you how beautiful the personal relations are.
Love it. Love the story of the wedding. Must have been very special. So now it's been, I think, more than 3 years that you are appointed as CEO of Decathlon, right? Which is an iconic company, as said, in my home country, France, but also globally. Decathlon, will just remind our listeners from across the world, is actually a family-owned retail company. That's why I wanted to ask those questions about family business. Founded in Anglo, near Lille in northern France, and is part of the Mullier family-controlled business network. In France, it's certainly the most beloved sports retailer, and more countries as well. It also has become, in a way, a cult brand in the world of rap and pop culture. So in this context, what was your approach, Barbara, redefining Decathlon as a global brand? And what does your brand account for today?
When I joined Decathlon, the first thing that was striking was how many treasures Decathlon had that were unknown to the public. It's incredible the depth of the expertise they have in designing products, in materials, in sustainability. And so it was almost like a gem that nobody knew about.
Hidden gem, yes.
A hidden gem. And so the retail side is just one part, actually, that is the beloved part that people know. But there was so much more. And so together with other people, we decided first to redefine the purpose, to actually make it larger into moving people through the wonders of sport, to give somehow the authorization of going beyond what we had always done. From that purpose, we defined a new brand, a new expression, a new identity that would actually tap into the experience of people. So that gave the possibility of actually redefining the experience in the store, the experience online, the experience in the app,
Yep.
and in marketing. So opening up, if you want, the blue box, we call it.
Yep.
The stores being very blue,
Yes.
we opened up somehow the box so that, progressively we would leave people get to know Decathlon and its depth
Yes.
so much more. Then there was a second part that was like incredibly important for people inside, from the bottoms up,
Yes.
which was sustainability. It's something that, it's so important to me. I had no problem convincing people that it will be one of our pillars.
You're ready to go for it. Yeah.
It was so ready to go.
Yeah.
Actually, the ask somehow was to accelerate.
To do more.
To do more, which was such a blessing, because then we actually helped structure to accelerate that and put it as part of the brand building as well. Because I don't know if you knew, but Decathlon is at the height of Patagonia with many, many sustainability aspects.
Indicators.
But people don't know.
That's right.
So that was a second one. And then imagine the somehow modernization end-to-end that needed to happen in an integrated value chain to be able to better serve people all over the world in terms of digitization and modernization, AI and all of that. Yeah. So those were the three pillars of experience, sustainability, and the modernization overall of the whole thing end to end.
No, that's super fascinating to hear from the inside, obviously, the way you started reshaping that brand, because I'm sure you keep working on it all the time.
Absolutely.
So we've discussed, obviously, the importance of corporate culture at IKEA, Google, Samsung. In my view, certainly I shared that with you before we started the podcast. Culture, to me, is a key success factor in any companies. And I was in the middle of that, Microsoft myself, alongside Satya Nadella, when we drove transformation to become an AI cloud-first company back in 2015 and all the way now to these days. and actually, what I love to understand, given that clearly super importance of the culture, and you said some of that before, how did you crack the code, internal code, coming from the outside, which was pretty unique for Decathlon? I remind our listeners, usually there was internal promotions and basically male leaders. I think you are the first female leader in Decathlon. And by the way, you are one of the rare female leaders in France as well, I must say, of global companies. Although France does pretty well on the board level because of a law we have at 45%, I would say, for female, which is great. But a lot more needs to be done for CEOs and CXOs. Anyways, so what is the way you were able, again, you mentioned some of that, but I'm intrigued, to be part of that culture while changing it as well, which is hard. And being, again, the first from the outside and a female leader too.
Yeah, a couple of things. I would say Decathlon is humanity first and is more of an emotional culture than a rational culture. So I remember when I joined the first, good 6 months, I was just listening. Yeah. And people were coming to smell me.
To feel you.
Who is this lady? And do we relate or do we not relate to her?
Yeah.
The people I had the pleasure of spending time with was actually a wonderful discovery for them, but for me too. Because I was more and more convinced that this was a wonderful company. Imagine coming from the outside, you're just kind of like getting into the swimming pool all at once without really knowing how it will be. And so every interaction was, to me, almost like a relief and a discovery into the beauty of Decathlon little by little. And I think it was the other way too, discovering who I was as a person more than a CEO and a manager. Then in a transformation, there's always goods and bads.
Always.
So in the transformation, when we we wrote what I call the North Star.
Yep.
We presented to the company the North Star. And there was this moment of inspiration. People were proud, and they had, stars in the eyes, I would say, of everything that we will be aiming to. And that was a very, very important moment of integration in the company and getting people to go like, yeah, we're going to do this.
Yes.
Then transformation started. And to be honest, there's places where they're loving it, and there's other places where there's a lot of questions.
Of course.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
The important thing is to listen to the questions and to continue moving forward.
Yeah.
Moving forward in a way that the majority of the people is in the movement, and in a way where we deeply respect the values, the roots of the company.
Yeah.
The culture.
Yes.
This is not about changing what Decathlon is about helping Decathlon be all it can be. And there's a big difference there. So we honor the roots, we honor the human fundamentals, we honor the culture, but at the same time, there is an evolution happening. And the ones that are doing the evolution really are the employees.
Yeah.
And they are accountable for this evolution.
Yeah.
So any simplification that would mean the CEO is doing this and that, well, guess what? We're all responsible here.
Yeah. No, I love it, and I can relate to what you say, Barbara, because I think there's always, goods and bads in any transformations, and it's a continuous learning process. One thing I certainly got back from, who inspired me actually after Microsoft transformation was some very specific pieces of our culture that we needed to change, which are not great. And I mean, if I was to summarize one big aspect of that, which is well known, it was really about culture at some point for many years where it was all about being the smartest in the room, which is kind of called a fixed mindset culture. So people who know it all and who are smarter than the other guys, particularly in engineering culture, it can be very competitive inside a company. And something that Satya did, and we tried to shape, was this growth mindset culture, the way that actually all of us have an opportunity to learn from anyone, anywhere, anytime. And this is the only way to grow our minds first, our ability to learn and do new things. So is there any particular aspects of the Decathlon culture you would say, no, it's not easy, but that you said, well, this ought to be changed?
Yeah, it's a very good question. There is one aspect, which is the responsibility is one of the core values.
Yes.
So it means I'm accountable for whatever I'm accountable for, but I'm responsible for it. And so when you combine this with an entrepreneurial spirit, then you can fall into almost an individualistic part.
Yes.
So the right thing here is to combine this extreme empowerment with a collective movement, to have all of us and the energy and positivism that exists in Decathlon going in the same direction.
Yes.
So that's the part that needs a bit of twinkling, without losing actually this part, which is beautiful.
Yes, of course.
Entrepreneurial spirit, but in the direction and combined towards the same goal.
Listening to you, it sounds like a deeper sense of shared accountability.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's something that we share in common as a team, as a unit, as a group, whatever, the way you define those organizations.
Exactly. And all of us going actually not losing the fact that we're at the service of the wider Decathlon.
So moving faster now, because unfortunately time is going very fast, I'd like to come back to sustainability, which I know is a passion of yours. You expressed that strongly already early on in our discussions. I was reading your 2023 extra financial performance statement, because I don't think the 2024 is out yet. Probably you're cooking it right now as well. I noticed you reduced CO2 emissions by 10% compared to 2022, while increasing revenue and generating 39% of total sales from eco-design products, which was a 3.7 increase since 2021, which is quite remarkable. Tell me more about, because you said initially, Barbara, that all the employees and the people are in love with sustainability. They want to do more. But we all know when you run a business, it's not easy. You got to make some trade-offs. So what are the hard financial trade-offs that you have to make to become, eventually or not, a net zero company, which I know is a big North Star aspiration?
Yeah. By 2050, we hope.
I know.
So a couple of thoughts there. The first thing is there is a no-brainer, I would say, frontier, which is the decarbonation.
Yep.
With that, it means redesigning every single product at Decathlon with the right materials and the right design to just basically have the CO2 trajectory go down. That's the first kind of step. The second step is innovating on business models.
Yep.
And diversifying, if you will, the way the company wins money.
Yep.
In here, there's like two sources that are really promising. One is circularity.
Yes.
It's the biggest increase in terms of business of the whole company.
It's very significant. I saw the numbers, I think 420 million euros at the time.
And it's much bigger today.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And you have, 34% increase, 100% increase on certain models. The models we're talking about are second-hand, but you have repairability.
Yes.
You have also rental. And when you think about equipment, bikes, for instance, electric bikes. So people are renting the equipment, but for a long time.
Yes.
Kids' bikes, renting, and you grow up with the latest bike all the time. So this is actually opening a path to that neutrality progressively. That combined with services and immaterial ways of actually diversifying the revenue.
Yep.
Then the combination of all of it actually helps have a path towards that goal. The tricky aspect is to be able to maintain the equilibrium between all these business models.
Cool.
Continue the innovation, the push forward on the new things while taking care of the core business models of Decathlon.
Yep.
And progressively actually, have this evolution with the new know-hows, reverse flows, and everything that it entails, so that as a society, actually, we move towards a different way of consuming.
If, just an add-on question, because what is, according to you, the biggest challenge there for you, actually? Because there's a number of different variables, all the way from materials you use, that you buy from or you create, to circularity of your business models. What is the hardest thing you believe that you have to do, like your peers as well have to do, if they really want to be a net zero company?
Well, when you think about it, imagine a world where everything is circular.
Yep.
Therefore, imagine that we stop actually extracting materials from the earth at some point or minimize that.
Yep.
The logistical aspect, actually, of how we thought about businesses have been on one way.
Yeah.
In order to be able to do this circularity, we need to think of the reverse flow. What I mean by that is, how do we get from people the things that they don't need anymore or they need repair? How do we create an efficient way to massively deal with all these products, actually either extract the material or repurpose, refurnish them to put them in the hands of people anymore? Yeah. But doing that at scale, not just for a company, but as a society, is a fantastic challenge that I'm sure we will crack one day. Because when you think about it, that will be a sign of an intelligent society, of not throwing up anymore, but being able to just use and reuse what we extracted from Earth.
I love your aspiration, and you're an optimist like myself, actually, Barbara. But as you know well, the world is evolving at a very fast pace today, whether it is in terms of geopolitics. Every day there's something new happening in the world. technological innovation, environmental threats. Now, I'd like to switch for the last few questions about, again, leadership, which is, and positive leadership, which is the core of this podcast. You are obviously a female leader. We said that you've been working in major global companies. You know, the CEO of a multinational company headquartered in France, which remains, again, very rare in the French corporate landscape. What have been the most difficult moments in your journey? Not just in that role, but if you think about every role you had, again, that led you to this top position, and how did you overcome them?
Couple of thoughts there. The first one was to find my voice as a leader.
Yeah.
It's incredible because I actually reported to women in multiple ways, even in the world of tech.
Right. Samsung, you said.
Samsung,
yeah.
But at Google as well, and Texas Instruments, they were all women.
Interesting.
And I actually saw how some of them were trying to emulate a style of leadership that was very masculine, and they were suffering through it.
Yeah.
So having somehow the guts, giving myself the permission to find my own voice,
yes,
was something that progressively, I gave myself permission to do.
Yep.
The fact of not wanting to sacrifice my motherhood and my personal life for the sake of my career.
Important.
I selected jobs actually to be able to have time with my kids every day.
And still today.
Wow.
Wow.
And so I always leave the office at 5. I come back home.
Yeah.
I'm with my kids.
Wow.
And then I rework. So the companies that I've been selecting are the companies that are maybe more performance oriented.
Yeah.
Because I deliver on my commitments.
For sure you did.
And I honor what I say. But the freedom of how I spend my time, it's it's mine.
It's yours. And it's very clear when you took all those CEO's job, you made it clear to your bosses that, hey, this is the way I am and this is the way I want to live.
I asked,
okay,
can I? Because if this is not how you see things, then this is not the job for me.
I agree.
At the beginning, I was tentative with the question, but for my latest job, I remember asking to the chairman, are you comfortable if I leave the office at 5 p.m. and I go and spend time with my kids? And he said, but of course, why do you even ask this question? And I loved his answer. And I said, okay, this is a place.
You got some very special bosses, probably. Yeah. I'm not too sure all companies work this way still today in 2025.
Yeah.
Despite the COVID-19, what happened there, hybrid work and so on. I think things have changed a bit, but still.
Yeah. And I think it's actually important to somehow honor what makes you happy at the end of the day.
Yes.
So I don't believe in the sacrifice for the sake of a career.
Yeah.
I actually believe that you're a better professional when you actually honor your pillars of happiness.
100% agree with you. It's wonderful you've been able to model that for many other female leaders too, probably following your path, not just in Decathlon, but in some other companies and listening to this podcast. Last couple of questions. I hosted a couple of years ago someone you may know or not, Hubert Joly, used to be the CEO of Best Buy. He's been writing a wonderful book as well, The Heart and Business and the Heart of Leadership. And he shared with me his deep convictions about a new leadership model based on 5 key principles. He said, as a leader, I must be clear about who I am and what my life purpose is. Be clear about my values, be authentic, be clear about my role as a leader, and be clear about whom I serve. So what do you think of these principles? And what are your own fundamental leadership principles, Barbara?
I'm a huge fan of Hubert Joly.
Yeah.
What he wrote is right on. It's actually one of the books that I keep very close to me.
Oh, interesting.
Very deep respect to, he was an outsider of the company like I was, and how he transformed the company, Best Buy, just incredible, the job he did. So this humanistic leadership is the one that I deeply respect, and I try every day to live at the companies where I am. There's also an aspect somehow that leadership is something that you evolve with the period in the company that you leave as well. I think the leadership that might be required in the first 2 years might be different than the leadership that you need the next 3 years, etc. Yeah. And so there is somehow some principles, though, that you asked for. Respect. Respect for others, which means respect them as people in their opinions, in their fears, in their joys. Respect. The second one is determination to do something positive for the world. We're here, and this is my deep belief and my motivation. Through the work that we do, we can leave a path, a stone in the story of humanity. So let's do our part. That's the second one that is very, very important to me. A third one is collective. I believe in the empowerment of people. So with a direction that is clear, I think people can do wonders combined with this respect. So work to me has never been work.
It's been passion.
It's life.
It's
work
life.
is
it's your life.
It's part of my life, and so I don't believe either in that separation, work-life balance and whatever. It's like, do what makes you happy, and do it fully with passion, with light, and hopefully giving to others. It makes the journey more rewarding.
It's wonderful to hear you, because I've found fundamental respect as well for the respect value. I think it all start with that, with people, anyone you meet in your life, start with respect. Certainly, I love about the fact that you want a positive impact in the world, which is something I'm actually very adamant as well. It's part of the podcast philosophy as well, positive leadership. And of course, the collective, the community, the people doing things together. So almost finishing now, because many listeners are actually really looking for this kind of exchange, what advice would you give to the leaders of new generation, who aspire to make a positive impact in their job, in their industry, in society, in their lives? What should they do tomorrow?
First, don't listen to fear. Take the step. Even if you don't know where you are going, you are uncertain whether you will be able or not to achieve something, do it.
Yes.
And that is really important because you don't want to live with regrets. You don't want to live with, I wanted, but I didn't think it was the right time, or I didn't think I had the skills, or I didn't. Do not live with fear. Just go. And if it doesn't work, then you would actually understand and learn from it. The second thing, I mentioned the pillars of happiness. This is really important. Honor them. I remember this teacher at INSEAD that said, do not come 20 years later crying to me because you forgot and it was all about work. So live life fully and honor the path as human beings that you are. Live with passion and respect to others. And the third thing is your voice matters. We can think and feel that we are very small in life and that the world is too big, but it actually, one voice can impact so much in life. So just being, living with light, with purpose, and having others in this journey with us, I think incredible things are possible. So don't feel too small ever. Your voice matters.
Well, I think can't be a better conclusion, Barbara. It's been a wonderful moment, and thank you so much for this rich, inspiring, exciting conversation. You definitely embody a very positive leadership. I can confirm, knowing you now in person. And I'm certain that your insights, your stories will actually inspire many of our listeners, wherever they are across the world. So thank you again. Thank you for all of you who are listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to leave a review on your favorite podcast. 5 stars is always welcome, and your comments on top of it, always appreciated. I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks for a new episode of Positive Leadership Podcast. Again, thank you so much. Muchas gracias, Barbara.
De nada. Un placer. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Merci.